welcome back to That Quirky Bird Girl. I am your host, Steph, and I will be talking to you all today about the blue jay. And if you've never seen a blue jay, don't you dare worry, my love, because guess what? Throughout this podcast episode, for those of you that are watching the video, I will be adding photos, videos, and a montage of blue jays as well as jay cousins. So if you aren't watching the video version of That Quirky Bird Girl, well, head over to my YouTube on Steph That Quirky Bird Girl, and you can watch the video after taking in all of the wonderful, lovely audio that I have set out for you all today. In addition to that, I have one of my absolute favorite plushes here with me, and these were developed by Cornell. They put in the sound of the bird. Yeah, you heard that right. The actual sound of a blue jay call. Now, they did put multiple different blue jay calls. That's the only beef I have with these plushes, is that I would like a wonderful little variety, but unfortunately they only do one call, so I accept where it is. And it's a collaboration with Wild Republic, so they have a bunch of these. They also have them in Europe. I've been collecting them for about a year and a half. This one's a blue jay, and I have a few other jays as well. So this isn't the only jay relative that we have here. This is a blue jay, can be found across the eastern coast and into the Midwest and some of the mountainous Midwest. Just kind of depends on where you're at, but you can see these dudes in a bunch of different areas. In fact, for those of you that are in the mountainous Midwest, you could even potentially see a hybrid of the Stellar's jay and the blue jay. So it gets even better with these lovely jay dudes. But that's me diving in a little bit ahead of schedule. For those of you that are new here, I always throw the chapters over here, and I'll do it again. So let's go through the chapters and what I will be talking to you lovely people about our blue jays for today. Our chapter 1 is going to be, who are the blue jays? And I know you'll say to me, Steph, you already kind of dove into what a blue jay is. Oh, there is even more lore, and I'm going to be diving into it. Our second chapter is going to be all about mimicry, and I'm not going to say much more on the topic until we get to that one. Number 3 is our bird feeder behavior. For those of you that have experienced blue jays by a bird feeder, you know what I'll be diving into for this section. But for those of you that haven't, I'll leave a little mystery. Number 4 is we're going to talk about a few plushes and also some materials that have helped me learn more about our lovely blue jays and some of my favorite authors. Number 5 is blue jays' commitment to the bit. And if you're wondering what I mean by that, you're going to want to stick around towards the end. Number 6 is how blue jays help me with perspective. And yeah, you heard that right. It is a little bit silly, but you know what? It wouldn't be my page if it wasn't. So welcome to my page. And those are our chapters for this podcast episode. I am so excited and so grateful, y'all. I just hit my 12th podcast episode, which if you've been following me since back in December, you know that this was my goal. And I was really working towards having a 12th episode. This podcast has grown so much, and I've been able to have so many amazing guests. Those episodes are more to come, though. I just want to acknowledge how much I appreciate everyone who has been tuning in, who has listened to my episodes, who has supported me, whether it be on TikTok or YouTube. I love talking about birds, and it is one of my greatest passions. And it also helps me heal parts of me that I haven't necessarily talked about, and I'm sure that'll evolve over the next few months, but birds have really helped me grow and understand myself better, and I want to continue sharing that message in a way that works for me. So I'm getting there, more to come, y'all. But in the meantime, thank you so much for supporting my page and for loving my content. I love creating, and I'm going to keep doing it, so expect more. Okay, let's dive in, y'all. And for those of you that are watching the video, you might have noticed that my cat just joined us. So this is Comet. He might be hanging out with us for a little while. He loves birds too. And yeah, just say hello to Comet. comment in the comments. Blue jays are actually members of the bird family Corvidae. And if that sounds a little bit familiar to you, it's probably because corvid actually are American crows. And if you were to ask me, Steph, okay, they're in the family Corvidae, what's their scientific name? Great question. Their name is Cyanocita cristata. That's their bird name. These birds are pretty unique for a number of reasons. So often thought of as non-migratory birds. They are actually migratory depending on the population. So if they are seeking different food sources or need to explore different areas, then what they'll do is they'll head north, they'll head south and seek and in search of that food. And y'all, they are pretty ruthless, let's say. Into that more when we talk about the bird feeder behavior, because golly oh my, they are most certainly a-holes. Blue jays can also be seen in larger groups, and there is often a looker-outer, so a bird that is looking out for birds of prey, anything that would harm their flock, and they are excellent at pushing away another bird if they feel that they are going to harm their chances for getting food or literally harm another bird that lives in their flock, so to speak. If you've never seen a blue jay, I will go ahead and describe it for you all. Imagine a bright blue bird about the size of 2 fists, and they are going to have an array of different blues. But here's the catch, y'all. They aren't actually blue. They are an array of different grays, but because of our interpretation on color, the way that our eyes interpret color, they actually look blue. But if you go bird watching when it's cloudy or when it's raining, for example, and look at a blue jay, you'll notice that they are actually a little bit more gray, like a deep, dark gray, as opposed to being the bright blue that we see when it's bright and sunny out. They're gonna have this like bright black collar along the back of their throat and into the top of their head. And they almost have this like silly blue mohawk that as they turn their head, you can see it sort of shift with them. Now, y'all, for those of you that see blue jays in your area, one thing you'll start to notice this time of year is that the blue jays are actually, their behavior is slightly changing. And the reason why their behavior is slightly changing is because we are entering breeding season. So March, y'all, this month is the month when blue jays will start breeding. They will get more territorial. They will get more defensive over their traditional food sources. So I'll get into that in a few seconds, but they are, as I said earlier, ruthless. And they will have one brood anywhere from 3 to 5 eggs. And if you ask me, hey, Steph, I thought blue jays ate eggs, I would tell you, yeah, you are right. Blue jays eat eggs of other birds. They literally go into egg houses, bird houses, and they will take eggs. For people who have built bird boxes or bird houses, they have literally had to have blue jays in mind because blue jays will go into the bird houses and they will take the eggs, for example, of eastern bluebirds, which is already a threatened population, and they will consume them. It's unfortunate. Eurasian jays will actually do the same. So about this time on Reddit, if y'all are fans of Reddit, you'll see people in England going on and posting about the recklessness of Eurasian jays because they are going in and they're taking eggs of Eurasian blue tits, or I believe even bullfinches. So they are egg lovers. It's where they get their sustenance. And there are other birds that do this too. It's not just jays. So gulls will also go in and take eggs of other birds. But it's pretty unfortunate when the species actually is a species that is declining, like the eastern bluebird. So as much as we can do to keep blue jays in mind for building and construction of nesting boxes, we try to do it, y'all. And I will also be hosting a nesting box build webinar here on my page. So stay tuned for more on that. So I mentioned they'll have one nest and they'll have about 3 to 5 eggs within that nest. Blue jays are pretty decent parents. But here's another thing, y'all. Towards the end of fall, you'll start to see that blue jays get a little And the reason why they start looking ugly like that is because they will lose a bunch of their feathers. And this is called a process of molting. So they will drop all of their feathers, they will lose them. Imagine if once a year we literally just shed all of our hair and then regrew it through a matter of weeks. Now, during this period of time, and northern cardinals are also another bird species that go through this, during this period of time, the bird is incredibly vulnerable. They are using all of their energy from food, from the sunlight, to go directly to regrowing out new feathers so that they can survive throughout the winter. Now, that being said, this period of time where they have no feathers, it's an incredibly volatile period of time for them. A lot could happen. They could become vulnerable to a bird of prey, like a red-tailed hawk, for example. So that's why living in these bird communities of blue jays is going to be so important for them, because they can rely on other members in their community to take care or to keep out an extra eye, for example, for this blue jay. Blue jays are also omnivores. So earlier I talked about how they will eat eggs, but they're not just eating eggs. They're eating insects. They're eating seeds that they can find at feeders. They really truly are just scavenging and eating as much as they can, but not necessarily scavenging in the way that a vulture might. They're doing it in a way that works for them. And these birds will typically live in the wild for up to about 7 years, which is a pretty long time. Northern cardinals usually cap out at about 3 years, which means they're able to have anywhere from 3 to 6 nests, whereas blue jays will live for around 7 years, so maybe they're having 5 to 6 different nests throughout that period of their life. So that is all about blue jays. Now let's dive into chapter 2 of mimicry. Okay, so if you've not heard blue jays being excellent mimicries, let me put you on, because blue jays are super cool. They are absolutely beautiful birds, but they are also incredibly intelligent. So they are able to mimic not just their own call, so the call that they learned from birth and from their parents, but they're also able to reproduce the call of a red-tailed hawk or a red-shouldered hawk. And the call sounds pretty different. I will say it's not the greatest of calls. They don't do the best at mimicking other birds, but nonetheless, they still try and they still make the best effort out of all of it. So their actual bird call, the bird call of the blue jay, is going to be along the lines of like that. Like this, like deep, almost similar to a crow, but a little less deep in their vocalizations. That is their usual call. In terms of them actually reproducing the call of a red-tailed hawk, it is much sharper, it's much higher pitched, and it's more like if you've heard the call of a bald eagle in film, for example, then you will recognize what this call sounds like. It is very similar, and it sounds pretty artificial. Anytime I have heard a red-tailed hawk or a red-shouldered hawk mimicry call from a blue jay, I've always been able to be like, oh, and that's a blue jay mimicking a red-tailed hawk. In terms of when they use this skill, it's used most often to push away other birds, whether that be a red-tailed hawk themselves or another species literally all together. In terms of using this call for red-tailed hawks, it can often actually be an indicator of behaviors to come. If you hear a blue jay call, try to actually find the blue jay, because they might be doing some dive bombing action in a few seconds. And what I mean by that is high up in the sky. If you see a blue jay sort of hovering around and there is a red-tailed hawk, you might be able to spot them actually dig their claws into the back of a red-tailed hawk and push them down in midair. Because, oh yeah, y'all, that is certainly something that a blue jay will do. They will use their feet to disrupt the position of a red-tailed hawk in hopes of actually making the red-tailed hawk move away, because something red-tailed hawks do is they will circle, and anything that disrupts that circling before they dive down on their prey is going to make it more difficult for them to, of course, gather their food throws them off, throws their ability to actually surprise the prey bird. And in addition to that, the blue jay call actually is an indicator that other birds are paying attention to too. So squirrels will listen out for this call. Black-capped chickadees will also listen out for this call. However, for black-capped chickadees, the red-tailed hawk isn't going to be as much of a concern. Black-capped chickadees, if you've never seen them, they are very, very, very small and they are very agile. So they're able to get the heckity heck out of there. Whereas a blue jay, it might be a little bit more difficult just because they're larger and they have more, things to take into consideration, like branches. Black-capped chickadee can kind of weave in between, whereas a blue jay may take a few more seconds of planning before they fly through a forest trying to escape a red-tailed hawk. And there are instances of red-tailed hawks diving down and getting a blue jay for a meal. Someone was actually just telling me about the other day, there was a red-tailed hawk that grabbed a blue jay, and all of the blue jay flock, so to speak, dove down and would smack on top of the red-tailed hawk. And another thing about hawks too is if they're disrupted in their food production and their food eating process, whatever that might be, the excitement of that prey actually wears off, and oftentimes the bird of prey will leave that food source and they won't come back to it. So if you do see a red-tailed hawk eating something, try your best, or hawks in general, try your best to not disturb the bird eating its food, because that will take away the source and it kind of reboots and they'll have to go and find other food. The exception to this is, of course, if you're driving along the highway and you see a red-tailed hawk up in the top right corner or top left corner of your car, they often will dive down and eat a animal that has been hit by a car. It's a great source of prey for them, and it's easy. So that is all about our mimickers. Chapter 3 is about bird feeder behavior. And if you've never seen a blue jay at a bird feeder, oh my golly, let me explain this to you because they are quite ruthless. I've said that a few times already throughout this podcast, but I really, really, truly mean it. These birds do not have to be nice, and they don't necessarily express that muscle, They will argue with red-bellied woodpeckers at a bird feeder and try to basically stick their little blue jay flag in a bird feeder so that no other birds can access that source of food. Bird feeders are great places for blue jays to gather things like nuts. They also love peanuts, and that can also be something that is found at bird feeders. They are not afraid, y'all, of pushing out other birds that come visit the bird feeder. They will literally dive down and slam their feet. If y'all have seen them on bird feeder cams over on TikTok, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. They will slam their feet down and they will make sure that every bird in the area is aware that they are at this bird feeder, it is theirs, and no one else can lay claim to it. It's just, I don't know where they get this bone from. It must be something with the Corvidae family, because it's not just them, y'all. Steller's jays also can be pretty ruthless. If you've never seen a Steller's jay, basically imagine a blue jay, but black all over. And depending on where you're located, if you're below the Mexico border or if you're above, they might have different plumages. Some will have white lines on their head. Others will have blue lines on their head. And some may lack it entirely. For the hybrids, there'll be a mix of the bright blue jay and a black Steller's jay. It's pretty interesting, but they have quite a few different plumages and there are different jays, but this behavior seems to be present across them. They will fight for their food. Another thing in terms of their bird feeder behavior is often you'll notice they'll join or meet at the bird feeder at a particular time of day. Blue jays are incredibly reliable. So much so to the fact that when I hear a blue jay, I literally have timed specific tasks to do around that. And I'll get more into that on chapter 6, but they are very reliable. So you might notice or start to take notice in the fact that they will arrive at bird feeders sometimes at 8:30, really depends on their own sort of circadian rhythm. But start paying attention to when they arrive to your bird feeder and what birds are slotted in immediately after, because you might notice that, okay, blue jays are coming at this specific time, and when they've got their bellies full, here come the red-bellied woodpeckers sliding in to get more food. And the reason why they're coming after the blue jays is because they know the blue jays are done eating and they're likely tired. They're going to go and do their own thing, forage, whatever it is that the blue jays are doing throughout the day. And then the red-bellied woodpeckers have a great opportunity where they don't actually have to fight for their food. They can literally just show up and eat, which often is a difficult thing to do when blue jays are involved. Again, they are very competitive with food. Red-bellied woodpeckers have an interesting call, so you may hear them doing like the they don't have to exercise the kindness bone, so they simply don't. Start paying attention to the blue jay behavior at your bird feeder. If you don't have a bird feeder, ask your grandparents. I'm sure they have one. And if you don't have grandparents, I am sorry. Or furthermore, if you don't have a bird feeder, head over to TikTok because there are so many accounts that post the bird behavior throughout the United States. You can see different bird behavior at bird feeders, and it's a pretty cool experience. So I really recommend it if you haven't had the opportunity to check out those videos. There are a bunch of really cool creators. Y'all, I just wanted to give an opportunity for our chapter 4 to explore a little bit more of these bird plushes. So I love collecting these. I talk about them probably one time at least in each of my podcast episodes. I love collecting them. They mean a lot to me, and they also give you insight into what the actual bird call would look like, as well as their plumage. So if you aren't watching the video, I'll describe it for you, but basically they are an all over blue and then a white patch on their stomach. They have this lining across into their breast that is a black, and they have this beautiful tail that is blue, and it has lighter to darker blue stripes along on their tail. Again, this is how our eyes interpret it. The blue jay call, you can tell that like high pitch, like it almost sounds like they're saying J, J, J over and over again. They're not, but I digress. So this is the plush that I have been collecting for some time. It is so much fun to collect these. I'm going to continue collecting them, and I'll be talking about them throughout these podcast episodes as well as over on my YouTube. If you don't already follow me on YouTube, follow me. It is Steph, that quirky bird girl. I post silly content over there, and it's not just all about birds. I'm also sharing my journey in learning Portuguese, and so yeah, go ahead and check it out. I have a lot of fun over there, and I'd love to see you there. In addition to that, I wanted to talk about one of my absolute freaking favorite books and my favorite author, and their name is Wenfei Tong. Oh my gosh, y'all, I cannot say good enough things about this author. The way that they write is honestly so catered to an ADHD autistic brain, and I'm not sure if that was Wenfei Tong's intention. I highly doubt it was, but it's where they landed with me. You can literally open this book up to any page and you can read it and just have fun reading it without the expectation of completing the whole entire book. This book is called Understanding Bird Behavior, and on the front cover we have a few blue jays that are arguing with each other. This is not a terribly wonderful blue jay encounter. You can tell they're pretty upset. It's a great guide on bird behavior. Wenfei Tong also has another book called Bird Love that goes into the social dynamics of love amongst birds. I have yet to purchase that book, but this is one that it's my third time reading. You can tell I'm just a few pages in. I'm trying to hold the page so I don't lose it. But honestly, I really recommend these books. I'll be including a link down in this podcast episode of this book and on my YouTube page. So if you want to hear more about their work, go ahead and check it out. It's just, I couldn't say better things. All right, y'all, that was chapter 4. Let's get into chapter 5. Chapter 5 is all about committing to the bit, and I've alluded to this quite a bit, pun, throughout this podcast episode. And what do I mean by that? Well, blue jays, when they go to do something, they really do it. They embody that. If you're gonna do it with your full chest mentality. Honestly, it has been so cool to watch blue jays, and I'm actually going to merge this chapter in the next one because chapter 6 is all about how blue jays can help you with perspective. And so there have been so many points in my life where I have actually struggled to get the motivation to do something that I genuinely want to do. And regardless of the amount of effort, the amount of difficulty, the amount of motivation that I have or that I am experiencing in that particular moment, it can still be difficult to get going. And so blue jays can actually be a great catalyst to help movement and gain momentum in doing some goals or tasks that you really find a hard time doing. I'm going to name a few things that I've experienced through blue jays that have really helped me. So one is their boldness. These birds do not hold back. They went so far as, and I spoke to it earlier with mimicry, to learn a bird call and be able to reproduce it just so that they can protect their resources, so that they can protect their flock, so that they can protect the birds that they care about, including themselves. So that's a little bit of the boldness that I see from them. And I actually take it away into my own personal life and say, you know what? How can I be bold in similar ways too? It's easy to say that I want to wake up and be energized and excited and I want to be motivated, but it's a lot more difficult to actually get your feet going on doing something like that. So having an external catalyst like blue jays that are as bold as they are, that will disrupt bird feeder behavior, that will disrupt the cadence of the actual birds that they live in an environment with, they're literally the true disruptors. If y'all are looking for that energy, look no further than birds. And I alluded to it earlier with bird feeders, but you can actually time things that make you feel more bold in accordance with when you are hearing blue jay calls. So there are times where I will hear blue jays outside of my window and I will tell myself, okay, just like the blue jays, it is time for me to kick it into gear and do something that is really hard for me, and I will channel some of that boldness through our blue jays. Next, we have loud. Blue jays take up so much space. And if you're someone like me who has struggled to always take up space and to demand that others sort of acknowledge their presence, and not necessarily in a way that's like, hey, I'm here, say hello, blah, blah, blah. Not that. It's more so just saying, hey, I'm here and I deserve to be here. I inherently deserve to have access to this feeder because I need substance and other sources have dried up. It's creating space for yourself to say, hey, I want to be here, so I am. And blue jays can help you do that. There are times where I go to networking events and it is really hard to be able to feel like, hey, I really deserve to be here. But every time I hit that roadblock, I ask myself, what would a blue jay do? A blue jay would not wait for someone else to tell them that they deserve to be there. A blue jay would walk in that room, claim that space, and have everyone around them say, oh, yeah, they deserve to have that space. And that's exactly the energy that I am trying to cultivate in my life. I just moved to New York City. It's an amazing city, but boy, oh boy, is it hustling and bustling. I have got to make as much space for myself, and I need that blue jay energy. So that is one way that I convey blue jay in my day-to-day. All right. Next, we have happy. So blue jays, obviously, to do everything that they have to do to protect themselves, there must be a certain degree of excitement or general kid-like curiosity that allows them to keep going and to keep being as ferocious as they are. So there are times when I'm down and I'm not feeling as bold and I'm like, you know what? They didn't wait for the moment that they were happy or feeling good enough to actually take action. What they did is they just launched straight into action, and the happiness, the confidence, the experience came afterwards. And that's a little bit more of what I'm trying to cultivate as well. You know, my confidence isn't just going to build. My confidence didn't just exist by making a podcast and just posting episode 1. This confidence came from a result of posting now the 13th episode and loving doing this so much, to now me actually being able to do it and sharing more of my process behind the scenes. So what I'm saying is, put yourself out there and the joy will come with time. Next, we have intelligence. So these birds are incredibly smart. They are incredibly, I said it earlier, ferocious, and they will do what they can using their intelligence to get them to where they need to go. That doesn't mean that they have one singular line of intelligence. That means that they explore multiple different types that their intelligence can suit their environment. So whether that means learning a different bird call, learning how to dive bomb, learning how to get rid of other birds at a bird feeder, learning how to stake claim on an area that wasn't originally their own. So I mentioned earlier, some blue jays, depending on the area, may be migratory, so adapting to new environments must take a certain degree of intelligence to be able to make those adaptations and to survive and be successful in those environments. We can take a little bit from that in if you've ever had to move across the country or experience a completely new environment that doesn't feel totally safe, but you're creating your own safety within it. you just channeled a little bit of blue jay. So congratulations. Maybe you've been doing it all along. And now this is another way that you can step more into that, especially. And the last thing that I really take in terms of gaining perspective is how community driven these birds are. So I mentioned it earlier, they live in small flocks, and so they are able to help each other and use those mimicry bird calls to allow other blue jays in the area, other animals in the area, to know what it is that's going on, if there's a hawk, if they need to be alert. Those are things and cues that really help them feel like a rounded community member or a flock member amongst the nature ecosystem. I take a little bit of that into my own community. You know, blue jays, I mentioned Blue jays can be incredibly bold and very loud, and with that comes the burden of responsibility to take care of their community members. And if you have that gene within you that it feels most authentic for you to be bold, that it feels most authentic for you to be loud, then stepping into that is going to feel even better. And that is one way that for myself, I am very bold, I am very loud. It's one of the reasons I've been so successful as a content creator, and it's one of the reasons why I love it so deeply. I feel most aligned when I'm creating content and when I'm talking about birds. But that's something that I also pull from blue jays and appreciate in blue jays too. And what I mean by that is when something is going on, when something feels like someone is getting mistreated or someone is getting bullied or spoken poorly about or to, I will not stand by idly and just let that happen. I have my whole entire life been the person who steps in, who says no, who pushes it to the side. That is someone that I carry into my community building, and it's something that I will always cherish so deeply about me. And there are times when it is harder to speak up and say, hey, you know what, that's not right. Don't say that. Don't do that. Don't react that way. This is why. I look to blue jays and I say, okay, would a blue jay let that stand by? And I know it sounds silly, I understand, but I promise you, when you can externalize the thought and think of something that is already doing what it is that you want to be doing, it becomes so much easier. And it's the reason why role models are also so powerful. But allowing yourself to externalize it from the birds, if there's something that you experience more frequently than people, probably much like myself, they could be really helpful for you in leaning into some of those traits that you value about yourself. And overall, with all of these traits, what we end up with is a very well-rounded experience of birds and how you can impact yourself just by watching the birds or spending more time with the birds. Birds like blue jays. They also help you keep accountable. So not only do they help reinforce these traits that you could already have within yourself, but in the event that you're struggling with them, you can look back and say, you know what? I didn't do that in the moment and I didn't think to do it. You know, sometimes things will happen and they happen too fast for us to react. But all it is a learning that we can take away and say, hey, if I were to do this situation different, how would a blue jay react in this scenario? Maybe they would be a little bit more bold. Maybe they would be stronger. Maybe they would be a little bit more quiet. Whatever it is that you are looking to lean more into for yourself, birds can really help you be accountable. And blue jays in particular, for me, when I'm not feeling my most bold self and I look back on a situation, I would say, hey, maybe a blue jay would do it a little bit differently. And I, like a blue jay, would do this differently. And it allows you to sort of distance yourself a little bit, because oftentimes what comes up in conversations like those is feelings of shame. And if you are someone who tells yourself, oh, like, I should have known, I should have just been able to react, I should have just all of that, it's not going to help you get to where you actually want to be, because you're stuck in the feeling of being upset with yourself. So that next time when a scenario does come around and you do have the opportunity to react like a blue jay, instead of saying, oh, okay, this is my opportunity, gotta act like a blue jay, gotta be a little bit more bold, you're gonna tell yourself, oh, last time I wasn't as bold and last time I didn't do that. And it just becomes this cycle of not being as kind to yourself, where if you externalize it, it's really hard to be mean to a bird. It's really, really hard, at least for me. So if you can externalize it into something like a bird, it can really help you in navigating those feelings of shame and not allowing them to drive your experience. Because when you let shame drive your experience, all that happens is the cycle, and you lose track of all the growth that you could be experiencing along the way. And everyone, thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of That Quirky Bird Girl. I post new episodes every single frickety frackin' Tuesday, and I will continue doing it. So up next, I have some episodes that will be featuring some amazing interviews that I have had the opportunity to do and some awesome creators. So stay tuned for that. Hit that subscribe button and expect more, y'all, because we don't stop here. Last week was the 12th episode. I reached such an amazing milestone, and we're just gonna keep growing and creating about birds and sharing my story and my love. So stay tuned for more, and I love y'all so much. Have an amazing day. See you soon. Bye.